Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're talking about Halloween. And I know this is different from my channel, but I can't make something all the time and I felt like a video was needed, so we're just gonna jump right in and talk about Halloween. Should Christians celebrate Halloween? What is it? When does trick-or-treating even start? I actually meant to look that up. I don't think I did, but we're just gonna dive right into just talk about where Halloween even came from. So I'm just gonna break down a few things just for anybody who may be interested, and just because Halloween is about 2 weeks away, I figured this would be a good time to discuss it, have a little sit down and just share my findings. The two holidays originally were All Hallows Eve, which was celebrated on October 31st, and All Saints Day, which was celebrated on November 1st eventually. Pope George III changed All Saints Day from May 13th to November 1st, and then All Hallows Eve was the night before. And All Hallows Eve ended up being called Halloween just because the words over time, the way they were said, they kind of formed their own word, which ended up being Halloween. But it was also a pagan holiday called Samhain. The name is a little bit weird, but I'm gonna insert the actual word here, but it's pronounced Samhain. And that was a holiday that the pagan Celtic celebrated, and this was a day to like celebrate the dead. On that day, October 31st was looked at as the last day of summer, and November 1st was looked at as the first day of winter. It was the crossing over from summer to winter. Fall and winter was always looked at in a negative way because it was associated with death, human death, because summer was nice, vibrant, warm, happy. Winter was always a dark time. The days were shorter, and people apparently died a lot during that time back then. To the pagan Celtics, October 31st was the time of year when the boundaries between the living world and the dead world kind of blended together, and ghosts and spirits of the dead would freely roam the earth. People were afraid of the ghosts and the evil spirits of the dead that would roam around, so they would dress in animal skin and put on animal heads and also other ghostly creatures to try to blend in with the evil spirits so that they wouldn't bother them. And these same people would go door to door dressed in their costumes and pray for people. So they were called soulers, and they would pray for people's souls to not be affected by the evil spirits in exchange for cakes, which they called soul cakes. So that is kind of where trick-or-treating came from. One of the things that fall autumn season is associated with is bonfires, and that's what the Celtics did, use bonfires to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. And they also thought that that would help them to tell each other's fortunes. So they would light the bonfires and go around the fires and try to tell each other their future. And the people thought that the presence of these ghosts allowed the druids or Celtic priests to be able to predict the futures in a more accurate way. The reason that the two holidays merged from All Hallows Eve, All Saints Day, and Samhain all kind of blended together is because the Pope was trying to incorporate Christian aspects in with a pagan holiday. So Samhain was about death. Samhain is also a god to the Celtics. He was Lord of the Darkness. It kind of got blurred. And also in the Samhain holiday, there were little tricks that were done on that night. So different mischievous things would take place. So I know a lot of people even call Halloween Mischief Night. And that's because a lot of negative things were happening. But in the 1920s and 50s, parents and other adults were encouraged to take out the frightening and grotesque parts of Halloween to make it more of a community event and a family-friendly, kid-oriented occasion. And by doing so, that took out some of the superstitious and religious overtones, and then trick-or-treating became more of the focus. So it appeared as though during that time, they didn't want the glorification of death to be just the focal point of Halloween. But as we see today, death is highly glorified, like literally glorified at this time of year. In a lot of these images that we see, a lot of the movies that are played, the way people decorate their homes, tombstones, bones of dead people, vampires, blood, gore, it's just the most grotesque thing. So some of the activities that are associated with Halloween. I don't know if a lot of people do this now, but I know when I was a kid in summer camp, we did bob for apples. And I found out that the origin of bobbing for apples is divination. And back in the day, the young women would mark an apple in a certain way with their own marking, and then they would put it in a tub of water, and whatever man got that apple out by bobbing, they were somehow destined to be with them. And then the idea of carving jack-o'-lanterns, that story is very twisted. So there was a guy named Jack, he was a drunk, and somehow he trapped Satan in a tree by carving a cross in the bark of the tree, so Satan wouldn't cross that. So he made a deal with Satan that if he allowed him to come out of the tree, that he would never come for his soul, and it would never take his soul. So when this guy Jack died, after living a crazy life, he tried to get into heaven and he wasn't allowed in. So he went back to Satan and tried to be with him, and Satan was like, no, I made a promise, I'm not going to take your soul, so you can't stay here. So he kind of like banished him out, and then threw a hot coal from hell at Jack, who took the coal, and then he carved a turnip. In today's day, people use a pumpkin. In the old story, Jack carved out a turnip and made little spaces in it, put the hell's coal into the turnip, and used that as a lantern to wander around so that he can find a place to rest for eternity. So there's a lot of crazy stories associated with how these things came to be, and that a lot of people just fall into. There's a lot of wedding things that are associated with old traditions that are highly superstitious and come from these old stories, these folklores of things that are rooted in just craziness that we still participate in today, and some people don't even know why. So Halloween is now the second largest commercial holiday after Christmas, and people spend a record $9 billion a year on Halloween associated things, whether it be the decor for their house, the candy, the costumes, all of it, any kind of parties they may have. $9 billion. It was $6 billion not too long ago. It recently just up to $9 billion. And based on these facts that I've said, and any research that you want to do on your own, you definitely can decide, should Christians celebrate Halloween? Do you want to celebrate Halloween as a personal preference? Just something to think about. I figured I'd just put out some information here, do something a little bit different, and hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope you stay tuned for more. And thank you so much for your support. Thanks for watching.